about your style, make you realize if you open your eyes, you can change your view. Walk the city like in these shoes. Gray sky turn blue. Change your view. Well, I can change your view. And I walk the city like in these shoes. I something old for something new. Change your view. Change your view. Walk the city like in these shoes. Gray sky turn blue. Change your view. Well, I can change your view. I walk the city like in these shoes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the City of Des Moines Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for February 7th, 2013. I'd like to go ahead and get the rules and procedures out of the way for tonight's meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. We good? No? Am I okay? Okay.
Sorry.
The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans. The Commission's decision to approve or deny a site plan is the final decision by the city. Unless the applicant appeals to City Council, you'll need to contact the City Community Development Department staff and the City Clerk for details on those council hearings. This evening, the applicant will be given 10 minutes to present their request after presentation by staff. Proponents and then opponents are allowed to speak, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Pardon me. The applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed, and after a motion, the Commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the issues under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed. We have one item, and we'll get to that in a minute, and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report unless an individual present or a member of the Commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and separately considered under the public hearing agenda. The City of Des Moines is pleased to provide accommodations to individuals or groups with disabilities and encourages participation in city government. To better serve you when possible, please notify us at least 3 business days in advance at area code 515-283-4209 should special accommodations be required. Assistive listening devices are available for meetings in the council chambers. The Planning and Zoning Commission meetings are also broadcast on Mediacom Cable Channel 7 for customers with that service, and the broadcast is also streamed in real time on the City of Des Moines website at www.dmgov.org. You need to click the Watch Live link for those meetings. Kathy, we have a quorum. Quorum being present. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. You're abstaining. 1, 2, 3.
I move.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm on a roll tonight. What can I say?
Quick draw.
All right. Now we good? I'm so glad I have you, Kathy. She keeps me honest in here. Okay. I'd like to talk about the consent item. Well, first of all, before we get to consent, I understand that item number 4, there's been a request for continuance. Is that correct?
That is correct, to the next meeting on the 21st.
Okay. Everybody understand that? Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving item number 4 to the 21st of February, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation, Kathy. Okay. We have one item on the agenda for consent, and that's a request from Susan and Brett Sodders, 2223 East 21st Street for vacation of a south 69.2 feet of Guthrie Avenue adjoining the subject property. Move staff. We've got staff move. CJ. CJ.
Are you guys using your mic?
She's keeping you honest. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Okay, carries. Before I move on, I want to back up. Is there anybody here that's in opposition to the recommendation of staff on this particular item number 1? Is there anyone here for that? Is there anyone here to even be involved in that one?
I am Susan Saunders.
Okay, and you're okay with it? All right. Well, I hope so, right? All right. All right, that's great. Thank you. Item number 2.
It's been approved.
It's been approved, I'm sorry. All right. Item number, see, when you start running fast, your tongue has to catch up. Item number 2 is a request from Hubble Realty Company, represented by Steve Niebuhr. Thank you. For review and approval of a site plan under design guidelines for multiple family dwellings to allow the development of 6 4-unit row house dwellings at 325 Southwest 7th Street and 2 5-unit row house dwellings at 314 Southwest 6th for a total of 34 2-story row house dwellings. Are you presenting on this one?
Yes, Chair,
Thanks.
members of the commission, Jason Van Essen with the city's planning staff. Let's see if I can get this to, there we go. Just to give us a little context before we get into the kind of the focus of the project. It's located, the subject property is down here off of 7th, south of the MLK corridor. You can see that kind of the existing condition of the southern part of the downtown, and this is an exciting project along with the next item, and kind of excuse me, and changing this area to work towards the long-term vision we have for the area. So just wanted to point that out. The response cards going around. This is response map. Excuse me, you know what? I grabbed the wrong file. This is for the next item. I'm in a hurry, just like Dan. So.
Yeah.
I move that Jason and Dan switch to decaf at noon.
Good plan.
So just hold on to those cards for the next item. So here we go. The first part of my spiel applies still, so. Here we go. So here's the subject property, Southwest 7th, MLK to the north, or Elm Street kind of intervenes, Tuttle Street to the south. Currently surface parking. Response map for this item. So the layout plan, some pods of 4 along 7th Street, a couple pods along 6th Street fitting into the site. The alley would stay, but it'd be improved to better accommodate the development. 1 access point off of 7th, and then access with that alley to the north and the south. Going through this with the, if you read the staff report, we had worked diligently with the applicant to do what we could to recognize the constraints of the site, the narrowness of it, the unusual shape, and also see what we could do about fronting or facing 7th Street and giving that a kind of a front appearance. And I think we've come up with a good solution. I want to thank Steve Niebuhr for working with us on that. So. This is the landscaping plan to the site. Color rendering of what the units would look like as a typical brick and hardy board siding. One thing in the staff report, at the time that was being prepared, we were still working with them on the end elevation that would front 7th Street. And this is an update from what you received, showing how that would be addressed. And this is essentially kind of a sketch that we gave to him. So want to thank him for working with us. And so you can tell that what that does is moves that door to the side towards 7th Street. We get some full-size windows on the main level and some additional windows throughout the facade, and just kind of enhances that front appearance. Going back to the landscaping, we really worked well and sorted through issues, and really there's only one thing that really needs to be discussed from the standpoint of a difference between the two positions, and that is the Class A sidewalks. Right now there is a newer sidewalk that was put in a few years ago by our engineering department. You know, when we do road improvements in an area that's a transitional area, you know, the thing to do at that point in time when the uses don't warrant is to put in just your standard sidewalk. And so that's what our engineering department did, knowing that redevelopment would occur down the road, and, you know, that there wasn't a reason to put that expense into a Class A sidewalk at the time. Hubble would like to keep that sidewalk, seeing that it's newer. What they're proposing is a row of trees kind of on the property line behind it that would mimic the Class A street tree alignment. As staff, we're still recommending Class A sidewalk and street trees, both here and on 6th. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Thank you. The applicant present, could they please come? Jason.
Real quick, and just to confirm, that request for the Class A sidewalk and street trees is also from our forestry department?
That's correct. We did consult with the forestry department. They gave us that input as well, so.
CJ would like to speak.
I have a question. Jason, could you explain what the difference is between the sidewalk that is there, it's probably depth, I'm sure, and what you're requesting?
What's there is just like your standard 4-foot wide walk that's set back from the curb, so there's kind of a green space. You know, it's more of a traditional setting for, you know, residential or a commercial area outside of our downtown. So you have curb, green space or landscape material, sidewalk, and then you might have a foot or two of landscape, whether it's grass or rock, and then property line. Class A would be, you know, a sidewalk that runs from curb all the way to property line with the street tree beds on the outside of the walk path, so they kind of create a buffer between the pedestrian and the curb. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess I question why we would require that, but, I mean,
That's our downtown.
That's a downtown.
I know, but, you know, standards are,
Craig?
Class A is urban looking, and the rest is residential or not urban looking, and this is an urban area, so that's why we would want it.
okay.
Okay. Mr. Niebuhr,
Thank you.
give us your name and address, please.
Yeah. Chairman, Commissioners, Steve Niebuhr with Hubble Realty Company, 6900 Westtown Parkway, West Des Moines, Iowa. I won't bore you with a lot of details about the project. Jason did a great job of explaining it. Really, it's a very similar project to what we did at 3rd and Grand, 2nd and Grand. 2-story units with attached garages, served off an alley system for the parking into the garages, 1,350 square feet, 3-bedroom units. We're planning on having a roof garden with a pergola, so that was very popular on our 2nd and Grand site, and we're just trying to really do a continuation of that, and appreciate you continuing at the last meeting so we had a chance to work through this with staff on the end units, and I think we've come up with a good solution. The one thing I would like to talk about, as Jason alluded to, is the use of the street trees and where they go. I'm not opposed to putting in the trees. It's not a matter of quantity. It's just, I think, a matter of, for us, what really makes sense, common sense, as far as do we really want to tear out that relatively new sidewalk that was just put in by the city and reconstruct it so we can put the trees in the street, or can we put them alongside it and retain the sidewalk that's already there? And I'll give you some examples of kind of what you're looking at. So here's the lot as we currently, it currently sits. It's a parking lot, but it does have great views of downtown, and that's why we're going to do roof gardens and the pergolas because I think it'll be a real selling point. All the roof gardens will be basically oriented toward the downtown skyline, so you'll have that view, so it should be really fabulous. So here's a little dark with my iPhone, but this is a picture as you go down 7th, and this is the Mid-American station as you just passed DART of the sidewalk there, as you, if you would, a processional down into the area we're talking about, just south of MLK. There's no Class A sidewalk there. The street trees, if there are street trees, if you want to call them that, are lined up just like I want to do them on the property that we're talking about. So this is a property that's just developed by Mid-Am, just north of MLK. This is what you see as you enter the River Point area across MLK into our property. This same issue came up when we did the project across the street at Rocket, the Rocket Street project where we did the lofts. And what was decided there was that we could leave the sidewalk and we put trees, and this is a picture, it's a little dark, but we put trees inside the sidewalk that was there, just like we're asking here. So that's across the street to the west. We're basically making the same request that we made for the project to the west. And then as I drove out of there, I just happened to notice on MLK, as you go down MLK, this is the sidewalk down MLK, and obviously it doesn't have that Class A sidewalk. It has the street trees on each side of the sidewalk. But I just think it's a shame to tear out that sidewalk. It's a waste of really money when we could put the trees inside of the sidewalk, create that processional down the street. So that's the only point on the staff report that I would like to discuss and have you consider. Here to answer any questions.
Yeah, do you know, Steve, how wide of a space do you have between the curb and the right-of-way line?
I should introduce Chuck Bishop. I'll defer to Chuck because he's our civil engineer and he probably better to answer that than I am.
I can't read it off the 11 by 17 plan.
Yeah, it's pretty small. Chuck Bishop at Bishop Engineering, 3501 104th Street, here tonight representing Hubble. Here's another picture of our sidewalk. And so, yeah, it kind of varies through there, Greg. We basically only have maybe a 2-foot gap between the, less than 2 feet between the curb and the sidewalk now. And the existing sidewalk, then the property line's right there on the back of the sidewalk. So you just don't have very much room at all in there to get, we're going to have to dedicate an easement to get enough room to get the, if we put a Class A sidewalk in there and still have a 4-foot walk and the tree well, we would have to have an easement within our property to get the sidewalk around the tree wells.
I don't think that's wide enough to have the trees. If I remember right, the landscape ordinance won't even allow trees in there because you need a big enough space.
Right. But, you know, we're going to have space between our property line and the buildings. So we're asking to put them back in here, this location, along the property line.
What I was
Inside
hoping was that you'd have a wider space and then we could figure out some way to do part of it or not, like those examples that Steve showed.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in my opinion, I mean, I don't care if we leave the 4-foot walk in, but leaving a 2-foot green strip seems crazy to me, and we should just pave it, put the trees behind the walk and call it done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my opinion, so thanks.
You know, I'm okay with that. I hadn't focused, there's a 2-foot strip there. I might add though, we are going to do the 6-foot, or not 6-foot, the metal fence, the black metal fence that's suggested by staff, and that'll kind of set the edge as you will as you come down. So I think we're doing a lot of things that are going to set that urban edge that you're looking for as you come out of downtown into this area. And I'm okay with paving that 2-foot strip. I think maintenance-wise, it's going to be a piece of dead dirt.
It'll look bad.
Yeah.
It might as well be paved.
John?
Is this saying that you don't need to tear up this sidewalk? You can just extend the pavement onto the curb?
Yes.
Can you do that?
Yes. Yes.
Leaving, that's going to look junky probably 75% of the year. So it would probably be just as well, rather than have to tear all that up just to do what you plan on doing, except just pave that.
Yeah, Greg brought up a good point about that strip, and I hadn't focused on the 2-foot there, but it's not maintainable from our point, so if we pave it over to the edge, that's fine.
I'd still personally prefer the Class A edge on it rather than meeting the curb line there, because that 2 foot of concrete that you're gonna put in is a problem, but I think we're nickel and diming at this point. But Class A is a lot better because you get it poured integral with the rest of the sidewalk and it looks better, but anyway.
So,
Go ahead.
Greg, where are we ending up, or where are you suggesting we end up?
I would like to see, even if they want to leave the rest of the sidewalk, that they turn the rest of it into a Class A section, which means they have to tear the curb out and pour 2 feet with an integral curb face.
That's probably more than I'd hoped to do, but
And by that.
to be honest.
And at that point, you
It
might
won't
as well
match the
tear
other
the whole
side.
thing out, start over, and just do a Class A, just like you'd like to do. But, I mean, I'm trying to be helpful here, but I think putting 2 feet of concrete in there is gonna fall apart over time because it's not very big, so I guess I'm back to.
So you're supporting staff?
Well, I would support a compromise with staff if we can leave the 4 foot walk alone because it's new enough, but I don't think we should leave the curb there. So I guess we're probably disagreeing with Mr. Niebuhr, and we'll see where it goes.
I'm not sure how cost effective this is, and this really isn't, well, it ultimately would be an answer Mr. Niebuhr would have to make. But, you know, I've seen red brick from the sidewalk to the curb before. I don't know how cost effective that is either, but I think it might be given the kind of design. And that's just my thought.
I love that for an idea, but I don't think it fits anywhere else, and unless we're gonna do it in the rest of the area, I'll protect him from that expense.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'll sort of throw out a few thoughts to the board. As I was hearing some other folks talking earlier about sort of this, someone was talking about the urban sidewalk versus the suburban solution, the suburban sidewalk. If you think about the Second and Grand project, those units are directed to the street. Their front doors and living rooms are to the street as opposed to being sideways. And the way this layout's done, even though, and I appreciate the fact that you've put some doors along the side and some stoops, these units still go not towards the street. I'm not saying that correctly. So what I'm getting at here is this isn't really an urban solution. We're sort of kidding ourselves. So it doesn't make sense to me to force an urban sidewalk if we've already let the idea of the planning effort move forward as it is. It's very different than the Second Grant. Those are all outward-facing units. And there, the sidewalk to the street makes a ton of sense. Here, it's very different. So sort of throw that out for thought.
Steve, I just have a practical question.
Yes.
How are you going to keep equipment off that sidewalk while you're doing your construction work in such a way that you're not going to crack the sidewalk anyway?
I think we've got, if you look at the site plan, I'll have the exact dimension, but there is a fair distance from that sidewalk to the face of our unit. So 15 feet, Chuck's indicating approximately. So I think we have room to construct and build and not get on that sidewalk.
I just kind of picture lulls and other
Right,
similar
yep.
equipment coming off the street and going up and doing the high work and cracking it like they do at Roosevelt High School in my neighborhood every time they do something over there on our new sidewalks, so.
Hopefully we're better than those guys, but.
Greg?
I'll jump in yet again. I think anywhere in the urban core requires more than a 4 foot wide sidewalk, whether or not we have an urban section or not. And 2 feet of grass there is not going to do anything. It needs to be paved. Just if we have enough people down here, you know, it's not in a subdivision out in the burbs somewhere. It's in our downtown area, and it needs to be wider than 4 feet.
Will?
Mr. Chair, I have a question about the color rendering, please. Could you show that?
Well, I got it.
Slide it over a little bit to the right, please. Yeah, that's great. First of all, this is very, very helpful to see what the project is proposed to be in color as well as in black and white. And I like the way that the facade's been broken up into different elements. My question is about the color of the penthouse and the, I don't know, the hardy plank or these that are in the orange and the yellow and so forth and so on. Is the intent to have these different faces colored approximately the way that they're colored here on the rendering? I ask because personally,
Approximately. I mean, I would say they will be in earth tones and similar to this.
I hear the word plural, tones.
I think there's an opportunity to not make it look like there's 4 of the same unit and give it some individual character, if you will, by unit.
I would very much like to see that.
Yep, we've done that successfully, like on our Midtown Heights project, and it was fantastic, and I see that here too.
That's my comment.
Anybody else? Anything else, Chief? I'm sorry, Jack.
What's the longest stretch of horizontal hardy plank?
10 feet.
Can I add to that? Could you also put up with this picture, the little picture of what we're really going to see from the street?
Yeah, this was done in preparation for the previous meeting before we had the reorientation of the end unit.
Sure.
That's not right, but I do have that. And I think from the same information I can answer Greg's question.
We're gonna hold you to whatever was in the cartridge in the printer.
That's a challenge sometimes. Yeah. Technology is not all it's cracked up to be. What you looking for, Greg?
What's that look to be, Steve? Or can we have an idea?
Yeah. I think it's 50, it's about 54, 55 feet. Well,
You hear that, Jack?
I heard that.
And on the alley side, that would occur, not on the Southwest 7th Street side, because we're putting brick on the Southwest 7th Street side, so.
Brick or thin brick?
Thin brick.
And just as a matter of education, is there a way to keep 54 feet of hardy plank from looking like it's going like this down the 54 feet?
Yes, and I know what you're talking about, because that does occur.
And I've even seen it in some fine residential developments of yours inside of golf courses on the south side the same way. And it's a concern, and you know, you and I had a little debate on the 3rd Street stuff about putting plank siding on downtown buildings, and I'm not going there, I just don't want it to go like this.
Some of the problem is when you put it over a foam, and that's partially driven by, if you're trying to meet Energy Star requirements, you have to have the foam on the outside of the sheeting, and that's just not a very stable substrate. You get a lot better application when you put it over the sheeting, the wood sheeting.
Which is the point here, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Because that always catches my eye, not just.
Not to say that's the only cause, but that, I can tell you that is a big cause of it.
And it seems like we use the hardy plank because of its rigidity and its ability to withstand the weather, and it's less likely to do that, but it still does.
It's better than vinyl. It's better than the masonite or the composite wood, but it has flexibility to it. You got to be careful. You're right.
Extra screws or what? I mean, okay, that's my
point. Well taken. Point well taken.
Greg, do you have anything?
I guess just one last thought, Steve. I really appreciate the top elevation. I think the proportions and sort of the breakdown of the masses is nice. Would you have any consideration in that lower right one? We'll see 6 of those along 7th there, and it's fairly austere and doesn't have, I think, near the level of, yes, that's the one along 7th, right?
Yes.
It doesn't have really near the level of sort of sophistication in how it's, I wouldn't, I wouldn't vote no on it. I'm just saying, if you'd be willing to put that
Couple things, here's some of the challenges, and I'll just tell you how we've gotten to this point and some of the challenges that we've already had to face. The two windows in the back are in the garage, not necessarily what I'd really want to do, okay? And I'll probably have to put sandblast film over those just so you're not seeing inside of people's garages from 7th. I don't think that's the view everybody wants to see. So that was a challenge, just in the way the units lay out. The window in the middle, both of them are in a bathroom, okay? Not where I wanted to put them, but to help the exterior facade, we put them there. The ones in the front, I have more flexibility because of the living area. It's a living room, but.
I guess that's why I'd probably actually go out on a limb against staff and say that unless you're willing to really rethink that unit on the street so that you don't have those issues, just putting a door in the side of it doesn't make it a unit that's addressing the street. So I'd almost say don't do the door.
I'd suggest, if possible, and my landscape architect friends can contradict me, and I'm sure he will. But
I've lost control of this.
Is it possible to arrange is it possible to arrange the trees in such a way that mitigates this austerity on the side elevations?
Right here is. I tried to highlight, it's not showing up very well, but you can see this is a concept of how we could lay out the trees along that edge of sidewalk, if you will, as you proceed down 7th. We also, as I mentioned, are going to put that 4-foot black iron fence metal fence to also set the edge, if you will, along that to create that corridor. I don't know if that addresses your question, Will.
So there'll be some other visual elements as
Yes.
well as the elevations themselves.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward. In favor of the application. Sir, would you please step up, give us your name and address?
My name is Stu Bassman, 14100 Pinnacle Point Drive, Clive, Iowa. And I'm here as one of the owners of the building and representing the major tenant in the building. And we've been in the area for quite a number of years and are impacted by this development and are excited about what Hubble is going to do for the area. We've had a good working relationship with Hubble. As a matter of fact, we've rented space from them to park cars for the employees of Doors Incorporated just to the west of the building. But it ends up that if the development proceeds, we'll be impacted because we won't have enough parking for our employees. So not knowing how all this process works, I wanted to come down and say I was in favor of it and hope that I could begin some conversations with the city and the plan and zoning to attempt to alleviate the problems that we'll face as a building owner and the tenant will face as employee parking problems. In addition to that, the entire area, some planning should be done to anticipate needs for future development. So that's why I'm here, and we're presently parking cars on the north side of Elm, and that property is not quite big enough for us to have 2 rows of parking. If it was, that might alleviate the majority of our problems. So we've got some ideas, and I talked to Jason before the meeting, and maybe we'll be able to work something out. The city has some property that's just immediately to the east of some of the parking that we've got right now on the north side of Elm that has value to Doors Incorporated, but probably doesn't have much value to the city. We could extend the parking there, and again, we're in favor of what's going to happen, but we want to appeal to for a little assistance in how to work through that. And I've gotten some good ideas prior to the meeting, so That's really all I had to say.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor of the application, please come forward. Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? In opposition to the application? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Steve, do you need any additional time? Okay. Do you have a motion? Greg?
I'll try. I'll move staff with the addition in item number 2, provision of Class A sidewalk to allow them to either add on to the existing 4-foot and make it a Class A or start over and make it complete Class A.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion? Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of Greg's motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation, Kathy. I know, that's why I'm watching. Okay. Thank you, that passes. I had to find my... All right, where am I at? I lost my... Did you take it? Here it is. Okay, item number 3. Request from Hubble Realty, represented by Steve Niebuhr again, for review and approval of an amendment to River Point Flex Office Park West PUD conceptual plan on property located at 510 Southwest 9th Street to allow development of 10.5 acres of vacant land for development of 9 mixed-use 4-story buildings with a total of 339 residential units on floors 2 through 4, 4,554 square feet of clubhouse, and up to 85,485 square feet of first-floor commercial space with an option of 92 first-floor parking spaces in lieu of 35,577 square feet of commercial space. The subject property is owned by 510 Southwest 9th Street, LLC. Jason, are you presenting on this one?
Yes,
Thank
Chair,
you,
members of the Commission, Jason Van Essen with Planning Staff. The response cards are going around, and this is the response map. This is kind of in the same vicinity as our first project, a little further west, a little further south along the Southwest 9th corridor. Here's an aerial showing the subject property in the area. This property is currently zoned PUD. What's on the books is basically a flex office space park, 3 one-story buildings. So this is a very exciting proposal that we're very pleased with. With the kind of a more of mixed-use development, denser pattern. I'll get into the design here to show you the, here's the conceptual plan layout. So you have Southwest 9th, Dartway to the south, Southwest 11th, and then Murphy Street to the north. You have the buildings along the streets, one somewhat internal open space area with the dog park facility. It's identified. These buildings are shown with commercial space on the main level, and these 4 are shown as kind of an optional. They'll be constructed in a way that either right off the bat it'll be commercial space or it'll be ground level parking that could be converted to commercial space. But these are shown as the mixed-use buildings, and this is residential with a clubhouse facility. A landscaping plan. And with the conceptual PUD, there's a lot of things at detail level with landscaping that gets thought out at the development plan stage. So this is conceptual. It just gives you an idea of what we're looking at. I'll quickly show a couple elevation drawings, but they have a program that they're gonna take you through 3-dimensional views of the project. So I won't go in too much detail, but this is what the residential with commercial on the main level building would look like. And then that's what it would look like with parking on the main level. From a staff report perspective, we did have some conditions. I don't consider them to be anything too drastic. I'll just kind of buzz through those really quickly. There was some limitations on some uses that were proposed. We were proposing a few more. So just mobile home parks, used car lots, adult entertainment, kind of some auto dominant uses, convenience store with fuel sales, off-premise advertising signs. 2 is just identify stormwater facilities on a conceptual level on the plan. C3 district landscaping, that kind of comes in where I was talking about that it's still right now, it's a little up in the air, but we want to make sure that the development plan stage, that the landscaping fits in with what we would apply in the downtown area typically. We have some comments on trash enclosures and how they're constructed and having pedestrian access points. Some comments on unused drive approaches and just restoring the right-of-way. We would like them to identify potential places for patio spaces for their commercial tenants, just so it's something that's figured out in advance. Ornamental fencing. The character of this area kind of transitions. This is a little further south than what we were talking about previously, and really is kind of a gateway into the downtown. And there's a real auto dominant pattern through this area. So we feel that it's appropriate to kind of lay out this eastern half or portion of the site and kind of transitions into what's going to be a more urban development pattern to the north and to the west. But what we would like to do is kind of a compensation for that, and something we've been doing downtown, overlay in the downtown area, is have the ornamental fencing around this parking area. And in talking with Steve, it doesn't seem that that's a concern, and none of the conditions that I've listed so far have been a concern that I'm aware of. Sidewalks, and actually including this one where we're covering Class A sidewalks. We're asking for Class A sidewalks from this point and wrapping back around. Right now there's kind of some shown here with some transition to your typical sidewalk. Along 9th Street, we don't see that as something that's really warranted given the character of this area and the character of this part of the development. So that's condition number 8. 9 is just to provide kind of some mid-block connectivity to the sidewalk. And then, let's see, there's also some I've saved some time, I'm not going to read it all, but we had some sidewalk issues that we were pointing out. Building signage, we just clarify that as individual channel letter signage, just to ensure quality. And then we had some comments about materials. There was some notes that I understand from talking to Steve after preparing the staff report that were kind of incidentally put on there about other materials and in text versus what's shown on the drawings. And we're just asking for a general statement, and I understand that that's their intention. What their intention coordinates with what we're asking for, so that's not an issue. Be happy to answer your questions. Otherwise, what I'd like to do is just get the computer up for you and let them walk you through what this is going to look like.
Any questions?
I just had a real quick question. Did this area see any flooding in 93 or 2008?
That's a yes from a lady in the audience, but I'll let the applicant kind of talk through that. I'm not familiar enough to answer the question.
Thank you.
Are we going to have them come up, Jason?
Yes.
The applicants, please come forward, give us your name and address.
Do you want us to do the document cam first?
I'm just going to run through real quick.
Okay. That's no problem. We'll just switch it off.
Steve Niebuhr with Hubble Realty Company, 6900 West Town Parkway, West Des Moines, Iowa. Just a brief overview of the project, and then Bob Ormsby with me from SVPA. He's got a little fly around that we'll show you that kind of gives you a perspective of what this is going to look like. I've also got with me Doug Salzgeber, our civil engineer, who can answer any technical questions. So the project is 339 units, and first floor will either be commercial or covered parking. And that a little bit speaks to the question that was asked, is this area ever flooded? We thought about that, and we're getting all the residential spaces up above that I think this area had about 3 foot of water in 93, so we'll be 10, 11 feet above that. So we've taken that into consideration. And it also got a little wet over on the other site that we talked about previously, and we've also taken that into consideration on those brownstone units. So we're not oblivious to that fact. So it's a 10-acre site. We did do some environmental cleanup on this site to allow this project to happen. As you know, previously it was flex office. The flex office market really is pretty saturated right now. So we've looked at what could we do to repurpose the site, and we think the first floor commercial along with the residential up above of 3 stories is a good use. We'll have a mix of micro units, which are about 473 square feet, 1-bedroom units and 2-bedroom units. There'll be a clubhouse, and the clubhouse is located in this building right here. And that'll have fitness area, internet cafe, community room, and media room. And we'll also have an outdoor grilling area outside. And then another feature we think will be popular based on our other developments around the metro is a dog park. We have a large open green space area, and a lot of the feedback we've gotten on a lot of our other projects is that we've been asked, do you guys have an area for dogs to exercise or a dog park? And we think it'd be really positive for a downtown project to have that. I know a lot of our residents, for instance, at the Second and Grand project, even Court Avenue, we do allow pets, and they do have pets under 50 pounds. So we think that'll be really neat. I've given Doug the charge of becoming a dog park expert, so he'll figure out what that all means. But I think it'll be a neat feature and should hopefully set us apart and be a point of difference. We have gone to 2 Urban Design Review Board meetings, a preliminary one where we talked about some details regarding the brick returns at the windows. And we are putting in brick returns at the windows as far as the corners of the thin brick. And they were happy with that. We also talked about the vertical elements that we're going to show you and getting some more depth out of those because they were originally pretty thin. Now we're building them, giving them 2 foot of depth, basically like a chimney, if you will, and giving them more mass and structure up there, which is really what urban design was looking for. So that was a good piece of input that we've incorporated. And the last piece was, you're going to think I hate street trees, but was brought up by urban design about the retail along Southwest 9th and Southwest 11th and the visibility of that retail in relationship to those street trees. And is there a way that we could put in bushes and clump some of the trees together to make sure that we have a viable retail sector on that first floor, which I totally agree. That is a concern. That's what we're selling, is visibility. That's what retailers want. And Brian Clark actually brought that up. I think it was a great suggestion. It was in the motion for urban design. So one of the things we would like is to follow the recommendation of urban design and be able to put in some low bushes to increase our visibility, to hide the bumpers of the cars, and yet let you see over the top and see the tenants that we're trying to keep viable. So that is the one thing that came out of urban design that I would like to retain. Beyond that, we've read staff comments and we're in agreement. So.
Quick question.
And I got to let the architect show the video.
Steve, what you had just asked for, was that all sides or one side or?
Basically, right now, we've got planned in commercial or retail along Southwest 9th, that frontage, those 2 buildings, these 2. And then along 11th.
Okay.
We're keeping the flexibility to do commercial here and here, depending really how this takes off. So right now, it's planned as parking, but we want to retain, if the retail goes gangbuster, and I think the city would be happy if retail or commercial down here, we'll convert this to commercial. Otherwise, we'll use that as covered parking.
Mike, just on the.
Greg, just follow up. I thought that the Urban Design Review Board's comments were primarily directed towards 11th Street, where there was going to be that Class A sidewalk and trees.
It was 9th. I'm not against the Class A as far as doing the walk with the drop face curb, if you will, out the street. I'm more concerned about the trees and blocking the visibility of the
I guess
tenants.
we have the Class A with the street trees throughout downtown, and I know our city arborist is definitely pushing for that. So if when it comes time for a motion, I might just suggest that you allow staff to continue to work with the applicant to try and find a happy medium between that, because I don't know that we have a solution tonight. And we'd ask for an alternate landscape plan to be presented that showed how that, if there weren't trees, we have not seen that yet. So I would just say, ask that we continue to work with them and see what can be done on that. Thank you.
Greg?
One of the solutions we've done in other streetscapes with Class A type sidewalks and trees, because I am a firm believer in trees in urban areas, is to locate the trees at where the walls would be, so the wall extended out, and then that gives a way to relate that landscape to the building itself. So if you've got a pilaster or a column, yes.
Okay.
And that's a way to get the tree and yet keep it out of that window area or door area, if you will. And so I guess I'd like to make sure that we keep whatever trees we can, and there are ways through it, so.
Yeah, I'm not advocating complete elimination of them. I just want to make sure we respect the view corridors for the tenants.
Any other questions? CJ?
This is a rather large project. Do you have a completion date for it?
It's about a $39 million project in total, so it's a big project.
Yeah.
It'll be in 3 phases, 111 units in the first phase, which is planned to be this building, this building, and this building. And then 117 in the second phase, which would be this building, this building, this building, and then these in the third phase. So I would expect to be 18 months to 2 years apart between phases. So it's going to be, 6 to 8 years out by the time we're done.
And then my next question is about parking. You're talking about flipping parking for commercial. Then does that allow, I guess this is a staff question, does that allow enough parking for this size of a project?
We believe there's plenty of parking on the site.
Okay.
For the proposed use.
Okay, and then I have a question about the dog park. I know in some of the instances, well, the city is building dog parks and charging fees. So if buildings now are including free dog parks, are we taking revenue away from the city dog parks? I mean, I think we found, the city has found that requiring parking with some of these large developments, that they have required parking garages, and then the city garages are sitting empty and the revenue stream has pretty much slowed. So I just throw that out there. Are you going to charge a fee for your
We're
dog
not,
parks?
and that's free enterprise. I mean, there's city golf courses and there's private golf courses, and it's an amenity we think we can offer, and we're not. I think it could be a point of difference, and we're not trying to compete with the city. I think there'll be plenty of people using the city ones, but I just know we've had enough requests for it for prospective
It's a good
tenants
idea.
that
I mean, I think it's a great idea.
I think it can really be an amenity that can set us apart, and it'll be free.
My last question is really Jack's question. Is Hubble entertaining an idea of getting a grocery store downtown? Because I know lots of friends that live downtown, and their one biggest complaint is grocery store. So I would ask that you might entertain that in one of your future projects.
Okay. I mean, it all relates to rooftops, as you know, and we're really getting ready to deliver a lot of them down in this area, and I think that speaks to hopefully being able to attract one down there.
Go ahead.
I just want to commend you for integrating a dog park into this. It is so smart. And an avid dog owner myself, too, it's very challenging for folks to find places where they can have their pets, and they're such an important part of people's lives. So this is a wise move on your part.
Great. Thank you.
Mike?
Just one comment for the commission. For those of you who were on the commission when the original flex space was considered, we had some concerns about trying to get those buildings oriented, and I know that market didn't turn out. I think that's fortunate for the city, because I think this project is a much better project for this site. It is a transition from Southwest 9th to 11th. So if you look at this site plan, we recognize that, and working with Hubble to try and give them some flexibility on those 2 buildings that were on 9th, but actually almost creating a street on the west side of those first 2 buildings, and really treating this western 3/4 of the site as a unit, and getting those buildings oriented to the street. And I just wanted to personally thank Steve for his work on this. They came and talked with us very early on this project and gave us the opportunity to actually sit and try and relocate, reorient buildings, and really worked with us on the architecture of the buildings, worked with the Urban Design Review Board, and we're really happy with, I think, how it's turning out. And I think it was it's a great project, and wanted to thank you again for all your help on that and working with us.
Will?
Steve, I have a question. You mentioned about, was this a brownfields reclamation
It
project?
did get a brownfield award from the state of Iowa, but it also has an EPA loan through the city, which is over $1 million of cleanup that we've done. It was a former PDM factory site, if you recall, so a lot of heavy metals. And we've done as I said, a very expensive program to clean that up in working with the city in some of the resources that they have available through the government. And so yes, it is going to be cleaned up to residential standards and use. And
My other question is, what's the status of property that's surrounding this? Has it been cleaned, or is it still in a state of needing reclamation?
The property to the west, which I can speak to, which was part of this property, on the west side of 11th. See if I have it. I actually have a map that probably can show you. So this piece right here, which was part of the PDM factory, that's been cleaned up to residential standards. The piece north of our site, which is now owned by George Sherman, and he's planning on doing a residential project there. It's my understanding, and sitting through enterprise zone meetings with Jackie Nicholas and his group, that they're also either going to clean it up, or if you encapsulate it with at least 2 foot of soil cover, they will, EPA and DNR will allow that. I think either one of those are the options they're going to explore, but I know they're going to do that to get a clearance for the residential use.
Shirley, do you have something? Okay. All right. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Other than this is really short. Kathy, could you switch it over to the... No, they fixed it. Once it starts, it runs through pretty quick. There we go. It's probably our old laptop running slow.
It's a RAM hog, it'll never work.
Well, it seemed to work before when it was up here going when I was talking, but
You may want to let it run a second time.
why don't I just pause it and you can kind of get a sense of the relief and yeah. So, all right.
Jason, there's some stills too we can show.
Okay, why don't you just do that? Go ahead.
We take up a collection for it.
I remember when we did this once
Yeah.
before,
This is city.
we all
issue.
suggested that everybody have to do that, and Greg, I think,
If this
chimed
was
in.
an
That's not going to
SCBA
work.
computer, probably would have ran just fine. That's right. Computer, Kathy, please.
Yeah, if we contributed like $10 an hour for all the time we've waited for laptops, we'd all.
Bob Ormsby with SVPA Architects, 1466 28th Street, West Des Moines. What I'll show you is some stills that the video was made from and give you some orientation of where these buildings are. This first slide is taken from 9th. You're kind of looking to the southwest, so those 2 units with the parking kind of lot in front of it. The materials are cement board siding, primarily with brick corners to the units. They kind of anchor the buildings, and they also anchor kind of the corners of the site. The base of the building will be a darker brick that will be used, and either commercially or with the parking. This was just part of the urban design review submittal. Some of the things we did, that Steve alluded to earlier with the brick returns and the the facade treatments. So this would be a view looking towards the north, kind of towards the northwest, along 9th again, seeing the units. And then you can see the units to the left that would be on 11th there. So that you're kind of looking into that dog park area in the center. Just a close-up view kind of the unit on 9th and looking beyond at what would be kind of that clubhouse element probably. Some details at the street level. You can see that we're using a very neutral color palette for the cement board. It will be the buildings will be a variation of some neutrals, some neutral warm grays, and some tans. So we're going to kind of mix that up a little bit. Not every unit is going to be the same color, but we wanted to keep it very neutral, not make it a trendy building. The accent for color would be established with the awnings that we're looking at on that commercial level that you see there. Another view there. Some details of the canopy and the signage strip that would be above. And this would be along 11th. And this doesn't really show that idea, but the idea that Steve was alluding to of having some more shrubs that would kind of give some visual openness to the commercial. And there was in no way, I don't think we want to reduce the trees, but maybe it's the arrangement of how they get clustered as opposed to an even spacing along the street was the idea. I don't know if that video would start again or not after it's been.
I'd probably just let it go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jason?
No, I'm sorry. Ready for you guys
All right,
to
just want to make sure.
make a motion?
I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. All those in favor, please. Anyway.
I'm in favor of opening.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Will those in favor of the application please step forward? In favor of the application? Seeing none, all those in opposition to the application please step forward. Come on up, line up here on the wall, give us your name and address.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Reynolds. I live at 112 10th Street in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm here representing DART. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Des Moines Area Regional Transit Authority, which is located at 1100 Dart Way, which is just south of this particular proposed development. I'm going to tell you, I was first notified became aware of this when I received the notification from the commission related to this, and wanted to come up and make some comments, and I wasn't sure whether we were going to be for or against it. But then, as you can see, I'm in the same good physical shape as Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, who's been in the news about his particular weight and stuff. So I was looking through the presentation by the developer and by planning, and of course my heartbeat and my blood pressure started rising and rising about some of the concerns that I wanted to present, and of course jotted down some additional ones that we just recently became aware of. But let me go through my testimony, and of course I'm open for questions. DART, of course, is a pre-existing use south of the proposed plan unit, and of course we are at 1100 Dart Way. That use that we have there is a facility that is the storage and the maintenance facility for the public transit agency that serves this region. And of course, DART, as a government body, has an essential service that we provide to many residents and businesses in the greater Des Moines region. I'm going to tell you this facility operates about 22 hours a day. In the future, it'll be operating at 24 hours a day. And our concern is as the new development comes about, the uses that are in this development need to be compatible to what we are as a neighbor, and we'd like to be a good neighbor, so that's why we're presenting these concerns. And of course, if they are not, we think that appropriate measures should be taken to buffer or safeguard those uses ahead of time. It should also be noted that as the region grows, so will DART. So our impact and our increased activity will have an impact on what happens to our neighbors around us. The development plans seem to incorporate residential units, as I've just recently saw, and we are making the city aware of the potential problems that occur when they're located adjacent to or near an operating and maintenance facility of a public transit agency. My 25 years of experience in the transit agency in the Chicago region has provided me a lot of experience about the conflicts that can occur between a transit facility and residential developments near or around that facility. I'm going to tell you, transit garages and residential units do not mix. But I'm not here to say we're against it. I'm just presenting our concerns so that actions can be taken so we can have good neighbors and we can be good neighbors. On the south end of the proposed development is, of course, Dart Way, which is an east-west street off of Southwest 9th. And on the western edge of the development is Southwest 11th, running north and south. Both streets are currently being used for bus movements to different parts of the city and the region throughout the service time that we provide. And they start leaving as early as 5 o'clock in the morning and expect to be done even earlier as time goes on. And don't come back to the garage until 10:30 at night. And of course, as we expand service, that will be going until even later. Who knows, sometime in the future, DART will be serving this great city of ours 24 hours, which could also impact the residential development. The DART 2035 plan is the plan that we have endorsed that has, for the next several years, these service improvements and increase in hours and flexibility and actually frequency of service. This will, of course, increase bus movement. We want to stress that this future development is something that everybody should be aware of as we go forward. In addition, and primarily for safety reasons, we are requesting that no curb cuts be made that allow access to from the development to Dart Way. If anybody would see at particular points during the day while traffic on that street may be light overall, there are certain periods of time where we have a lot of buses going there and coming back from the garage. I've seen at times, based on how schedule is, buses will line up from our driveway, which seems to be very close to one of the curb cuts you're proposing to the development on the north side, all the way back almost to the BP station, the Taco Bell restaurant development. Okay. So we have a high concentration of buses going and coming into our facility at certain times of the day. I think if you had the actual drawing of the thing also, you'll see right where it says the D in Dart Way, of course, is our entrance to our bus facility. And that kind of correlate right to where your finger is where it says Dart Way, that particular ingress into the development. So again, not knowing the actual dimensions, that is one particular concern that we have. We've gone as far as not requiring our buses to come down Southwest 11th into Dart Way to avoid the congestion that we have getting our own buses into the garage. And of course, this road, once it was finished last year, became a convenient shortcut for many of the motorists to go from one end, from Southwest 11th to, of course, MLK. So we're strongly advocating there's no entrance on Dart Way, and that is not only a convenience to us, but it'll be a convenience to the residents of whatever development that occurs. DART's facility, unfortunately, is built on a floodplain of the Raccoon River. While that in itself was not a good decision back in the 1970s, it is what it is. The facility has experienced flood conditions both in 1999 and in 2008. We did have to evacuate, however, floodwaters did not consume our property. When I came in 2010, we were concerned about our retention pond to the west of our property that doesn't have a proper outflow about the flooding at that point in time. Of course, with those conditions, stormwater drainage around the facility, I consider is poor and is a constant concern to DART.
Tom, we're going to
Yes.
give you about another minute.
All right, I can finish up. The parcel up for consideration has had errant or planned dumping of fill on it for the last year, despite the no posting signs that have been posted. DART is concerned that the building up of the base property will increase the flood concerns around us. DART wants to make sure that the developer and the subsequent uses are required to hold and disperse their own stormwater with no impact. Couple other points I want to make. We have line of sight technology for our radio system that communicates to all our buses. That's from that facility shown near Dart Way, and it has to go up to the 81 Grand Tower. Concern not knowing the heights of those buildings adjacent to Dart Way will possibly block and I guess affect our transmission. And of course, while we want to be good neighbors, we also want to encourage the commission and the city to note that there are bus stops on Southwest 9th. We provide service along Southwest 9th, and we would encourage that there be bus stops or at least access that is ADA accessible to those sites from the development. Since there is a good number of residents there, they're all not going to park, and we, of course, would appreciate the business. That's all I have to say.
Thank you,
and
Tom.
available for questions.
Any questions? Greg? Jeff?
It's kind of to both of you. Have you and Mr. Niebuhr had a chance to visit about these concerns before bringing them to the commission this evening?
I have not. I have received the notice and wasn't aware of any of the development that was occurring, so we decided to come here and provide some general comments, but as I said, seeing the actual plans has increased my anxiety over it.
And same question for city staff. Before tonight, have you had opportunity to visit with them about DART's concerns? The planning.
Well, I guess a couple different things. The River Point West area has been a master plan for residential development for over 10 years. So the idea of residential being down this area is not a new concept. As a matter of fact, when the flex space was proposed on the site, it was actually kind of in violation of what we had for the plan for this area. So residential has been planned for this for a number of years. So I can't speak to all of the different outreach that's been done on that planning effort, but the plan has been discussed for nearly my entire time at the city here. I guess the question I have is about the access points along Dart Way. Even the flex space that was approved previously had access out to Dart Way. Regarding the noise concerns, I think maybe Mr. Niebuhr can address maybe the construction methods that are being used to, I think the same question came up when the last meeting when we were looking at the multifamily project that was down near the Public Works yard, and there was a question about potential noise and things like that from the Public Works facility. And so maybe Mr. Niebuhr can address or plan for some of that in the construction that's used on, especially on the units that are closest to Dart Way. Other than that, I know we send out pre-application notices to agencies. This would have come through a pre-application meeting. I don't know if DART had a representative at that pre-application meeting. Other than that, I think other than construction, I assume they've been notified, so.
Mike, I'm not trying to derail this on a notice thing. It just seems to me that DART's a big thing, buses are big objects, and it's been there through the whole planning process, and I didn't hear anything about it earlier from planning or Mr. Niebuhr in the presentation. I'm sure that concerns about buses must have been taken into consideration before development of a $39 million project. I just didn't hear anything. Yeah. That's all.
Once again, there's always been residential as part of this River Point business plan, or River Point West development area, and residential on this site. So I'm not certain through that planning process whether there was issue raised with DART being across the street or not.
And I'm all for the residential property. It just, we're talking.
Yep.
I just want to clarify DART's position. we're aware that there's going to be that parcel developed sometime in the future, and I don't think we're totally against any type of development, whether it be residential or commercial in the middle of nowhere. But it's just the idea that, as I said in my testimony, we want to have some safeguards and/or buffers that would actually make this a good development that won't impact us and, of course, the people that choose to live there.
Greg, you got something?
You were talking about a DART, I think you called it 2035 plan or something like that. I guess my question for you and for DART is, I know on the east side of the river, the City Public Works Department is making plans and actually moving forward with relocating their public works area for the growth of the master plan and sort of the mixed-use development. Has there been any discussions, and I haven't looked at your plan or your 2035 plan. I guess my specific question is, are you guys planning on staying here forever, or is there something in your plan about moving your facility?
That's a very good question. Right now, our plan was primarily on the service end. And while I'm going to say dished our location because it being in a floodplain is actually a good location because it's near the central area where our bus service is located. So the deadhead time that we have between our location and where the routes start is very small, short. The other thing is this is a federally funded facility, and of course, if there is any decision to move, it requires the federal government to actually come in and approve that, because if we do move or have to abandon it for any reason, someone's got to be liable for the undepreciated value of that property or the investment made by the federal government, which is always very it's not an easy thing to do, to come up with the additional money to actually pay off a garage and relocate it somewhere. In my experience in Chicago, one of my planners actually tried to locate a bus garage somewhere else in the city of Chicago. Turned out after 36 sites that were located, they finally found one in an old abandoned rail yard. So it's not going to be one that we don't see ourselves doing in the near future.
Thank you. Any other questions, Greg?
I guess I don't have any questions, it's just a comment that I think, again, this is an urban place and that buses are part of it, and if the developer doesn't really see a problem with locating near this facility, and certainly the people that are going to move in there will have that choice and can make that choice. And so I guess I don't see that it's, maybe you're worrying more than I might, and that's your job, but from a planning point of view, I guess I don't see the problem.
Ted?
I think the DART 2035 plan is a very well circulated document within the community. I think it's a good plan. I think public transit in Des Moines and particularly bus public transit is going to grow. I think we want it to grow. I think it's probably part of why Hubble wants to be on that site, and I think it's why people are moving downtown, because there is public transit. That being said, when that was Pittsburgh Des Moines Steel and when it was Stetson Building Products, there were probably much less consideration given to stormwater and retention and detention and everything else. You sit up here long enough and you figure out that whenever we build something new, it's generally better than what was there. The dumping goes away when they build something there. I am particularly sensitive to neighbors, new neighbors moving in and then complaining about what was already there. You know, the years ago when we first started getting housing downtown, and all of a sudden people realized that trains sometimes whistle their whistles.
I know that well.
When they go through town, and those trains have been here for 150 years or more. The buses aren't going anywhere. We don't want the buses to go anywhere, so I'm sure Hubble thought about that. And you know, gosh, if you have to move your radios a little bit, you know, maybe you might have to, Tom.
No, we're just bringing those up as a concern.
I mean, you bring us lots of data. I frankly happen to think that this is a very good project that would happen, and I bet you they'd be more than happy to work closely with you, and I bet the residents don't want to get hit by buses. and buses don't want to hit residents and all that kind of thing. So I'm sure there's a solution to be had with Hubble, and I think Hubble would work with you on that.
Tim?
I just want to kind of reiterate without, the flood thing was an issue, it was in my mind too, being new to the city, and welcome to Des Moines. We had a horrendous couple of decades. I think probably worse than recorded history. But I think also the federal government has taken steps to hopefully alleviate and mitigate these problems that we had in that area in particular. And even though it's probably a good idea to mitigate your buses when you know there possibly could be a flood, and knock on wood, it won't happen again in our generation, but I think that's should alleviate a little bit of your anxiety there. And again, with the retention pond, in the short time that I've seen what Hubble's about and what they do, it is going to help your property more than hinder it, and hopefully that will help too. Everything they do is what I have seen is first class, and they work with you on any concerns.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else? Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to the application? In opposition to the application? Seeing none. Steve, do you need any additional time?
Promise to keep this very brief, but I feel like I should address that. There were discussions with DART, and in fact, one of the products that came out of that, and it was back, I want to say in '08. I don't believe this gentleman was maybe there at the time, but one of the things that was discussed during that time, and we actually had advocated and wanted, was parking along DART. You can see we have parking along 11th Murphy, and wanted to have that extra parking if available, and that was one of the points that DART made to us at the time, was we don't want parking on DART Way, so that we didn't do it. So there has been input. I could appreciate that maybe it hasn't been recently. This is the first I've heard that there might be some concerns. Quite honestly, I haven't heard anything. As far as our concerns regarding their operations, I'm sure they operate their facility in conjunction with all the noise and smell and whatever requirements, and as long as they do that, I'm sure we're going to get along just fine. We're going to be one story up in the air. I think that's going to alleviate a lot of the noise issues. We dealt with noise on 2nd and Grand. I can tell you that is a very noisy corner. It's part of the loop downtown, and we had to deal with that. So there are construction techniques that we can put in place that will deal with that. I don't have any concerns. We've considered it. This area has always been residential, as far as, like Mike said, the River Point West, Gray's Landing, whatever you want to call it. 10 years or more has been planned for residential, so this shouldn't be a surprise.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Ted.
Would you be willing to go and sit down with Tom and Elizabeth from DART just to discuss where you're at with it?
Absolutely. I don't think that we need to eliminate these, though, because we had those when we had a flex office park there, and we had their input, quite honestly. That's not a dedicated street for DART. It's a public street.
Sure. You'd be willing to go sit down and talk to them about it?
I would.
Okay.
Anything? Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to move staff with the provision that staff work with the applicant on tree placement abutting the retail bays.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor of Mike's motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Acclamation, Kevin. Oh, one opposition. I'm sorry. Got it? Okay.
Was the one?
It passes.
Vicky.
Vicky. Let me set up.
Steve.
I'm going to go ahead and bring up item number 5, 4 being continued to the 21st. Item number 5 is a request from Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden represented by Amanda Jordan for review and approval of a site plan, Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden, under design guidelines in DR districts on property located at 901 Robert D. Ray Drive to allow redevelopment of the Des Moines Botanical Center for outdoor botanical gardens, including removing existing through vehicular access on the Robert D. Ray Park Road. The subject property is parkland owned by the city of Des Moines. Jason, are you presenting on this one?
Yes.
Thanks, sir.
The aerial before you identifies the subject property, the Greater Des Moines Botanical Gardens along the riverbank. Before I get too much further along, I do want to point out that you have seen things related to this in the past. In 2011, you reviewed some of the vacation, the Park Street, Robert D. Ray Drive in this area was a Park Street. It's actually already been vacated, and this land as far as park space has been vacated as well. So tonight, just to emphasize, what we were looking at is a site plan and reviewing that against the design guidelines for the downtown riverfront zoning district. The site also includes a little bit, but to the south of 235, where they're doing kind of some landscaping entrance feature.
Jason, let me back up for just a minute. You said they're consistent with the 2020 Community Character Plan. Is that what you're saying? Whether it corresponds with that?
Yeah, I mean,
this wasn't even part of the 2020 Community Character Plan.
I'm not saying, no, what I'm saying is that the zoning's in place.
Okay.
What we're reviewing today is just a site plan under design guidelines for site plans that occur within the DR zoning district.
Okay,
So,
and that's all
yeah.
Because I know, I sat on 2020, and I
Right,
know
no,
that
I
was part of it.
wasn't commenting on the plan. I'm
Okay.
just trying to make sure we understand, starting off my presentation, that we understand that
No,
we're
that's good.
comparing this is a site plan for design guidelines.
Nope, I apologize.
Response map?
Thank you.
Yep. I have more technical drawings that I'll show, but this is just kind of the overall plan for the facility. And actually, probably what I'll do, I think it'll show up better if we just pass that around. So Ted, if you want to take a look at it, we pass it around. So here's the site plan. So we have the facility, we have garden space, the trail. There is a couple of things that are happening with a cafe space addition, and then one of the greenhouse buildings coming down, some changes occurring up here. In the staff report, there's a couple things that we're asking for, and I'll point that out, is some landscaping that buffer what right now is a hidden wall of this production or greenhouse from views from this direction. And then also we have some places where the fencing they're proposing is going to be within 20 feet of the trail. We believe that those would be good locations to have kind of a landscape shrub buffer or transition between the fence and the trail. After 20 or so feet, the value of that really diminishes, so we weren't asking for that except for in these areas here highlighted in green. So we've gone through, we've reviewed the site plan against the design guidelines in the DR zoning district. I'll just go ahead and jump to the conditions that we're recommending. One is just our kind of standard conditions, just compliance with all of the technical requirements of the Permit and Development Center from the site plan review standpoint. Clarification note regarding landscaping that the site shall be, that the off-street parking lot shall be landscaped in accordance with the C2 district landscaping standards. 3 is hitting that shrubs between the fence and the trail comment. And then 4 hits the kind of, we're thinking this would be because of the narrowness, that it'd be best to use ornamental grasses. 5 is a standard condition, just referencing the tree mitigation and preservation principles or requirements. And that 6 is another technical one that basically we're just asking for the gate and the location, the design of that to be identified on the site plan for up in this area. So with that, I'd be happy to answer your questions or turn it over to the applicant to kind of give you a more in-depth presentation.
Any questions? Ted?
So we're recommending more landscaping for the botanical garden?
Well, where that comes into play is in the parking lot. We don't, the parking lot should do justice to the rest of it, is our perspective.
I trust them with the landscaping.
Greg, do you have something?
I think, if I may, I think the biggest thing is that they're not wanting to do some of the islands because for bus parking, and I'll let them address that.
Go ahead, Greg.
Could you tell us a little bit about, obviously the trail gets adjusted coming along there, the public trail. And can you tell us a little bit about the fencing and sort of security issues and just the visibility for those? I'm hoping those that aren't paying still get an opportunity to see in and maybe then want to go pay.
Yeah, I think it'd be best to let the applicant kind of talk you through that and kind of talk about how they envision that working. But the grades, there are some changes and they are showing something, some of it being further back. And I think they could walk you through their thought process better than I could.
Greg, you already got it? Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Is the applicant present? Please have him come forward. Do we know this guy? We still need your name and address, Mike.
Mike Simonson, 1717 Ingersoll, Des Moines, Iowa. On a rare occasion, I do come down and submit. With me this evening is Doug Gouling, the past chair of the Friends Committee for the Botanical Garden and current board member. Stephanie Jutilla, the relatively new executive director of the Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden, and also Brad Keel is the civil engineer, and he's with us, who might be able to answer some technical questions if you have any. This is a little bit odd project for us in that, and I think for you too, and that when we review city standards against a piece of property for C2 zoning, we're used to looking at buildings with parking lots and not botanical gardens. When you step back and look at this project as a whole, it's a botanical garden. But I thought it might be helpful, especially for a few of the new board members, if I can just talk a little bit about the site as a whole. I won't take very long to do that, and then hone in on the parking lot, since that seems to be the issue as to why we're here. And again, it's such a tiny part of this overall development. I'm just going to place this colored graphic here, and if we can zoom in on this a little bit.
Need to move it over, Mike.
Thank you.
There you go.
With the river being in this area, certainly we're excited about this end cap of the river walk, because it really will become the focus of the property. And perhaps I can answer some of the questions, for example, Greg, of what you're asking at this time. But we're here to talk about this parking lot area. The extensive gardens are off into this particular area with a water garden here. All of the patrons who enjoy the garden will enter through the conservatory out over a water garden, which is in this area, and back into all of the formal gardens here. We are doing a very small addition to the building here, which will be for a cafe. It'll have a spectacular outdoor terrace. I'd like to just show you an image, a quick graphic of what that would look like. We're hoping to create another one of those destination places, and I think of the Art Center. A lot of people enjoy the cafe at the Art Center, and we're seeking to create an environment such as that with the water garden, a slight green edge, and then the view of the river beyond, to give one the illusion that we're connected to the river, even though we're not. There'll be a very nice boardwalk that connects to the formal gardens. In terms of the exterior of the building, we're not really touching anything other than a small colonnade area which exists today. You can picture the bronze gates that are along that colonnaded area. We are removing 3 bays of that and infilling it with glass, and either side, either limestone at 12 inches by 24 inches, very similar to what you see on this building, on the exterior, or a precast concrete to match. We think we're going to be able to buy the limestone actually for a better price than one can buy the concrete, if you can believe that. In terms of the parking lot expansion, parking is a concern of ours. Even today with the Botanical Center when there are events, that parking lot is completely full. So what we are proposing to do is to remove a storage building that is located here in one of the 4 greenhouses, so that we can expand the parking up into this area. Quite simple. Today you look at a storage building in the end of a greenhouse. When we're completed, you'll see the end of a greenhouse. Not a bad thing to look at, but I would like to just mention relative to the staff comments that we are in support of staff comments, but I would like latitude on one item, and I'll tell you why, which is why we're here. Again, as I mentioned, with bulk regulations, the bulk regulations are written in an attempt to apply to every project type. One of the regulations, and Michael, Jason, I'm going to rely on you to correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the regulations require a buffer against residential property. And and again, if I'm wrong, correct me, but that buffer would require that there be a fence, a cedar fence or some opaque fence at between the 2 properties. This property is similar to Iowa Lutheran. If you picture driving up University and Iowa Lutheran sits up on the hill, the residential properties up here are very similar to this. They're way, way, way up there. And we would not like to have to install a cedar fence. I think the views from the apartments up there are phenomenal of downtown, and they look over our property, over this botanical garden. So if the rule is we have to have a cedar fence because we're next to residential, we don't want to do a cedar fence. This is all a woodland area from about this point up. When I'm standing here, I can't even see the
Mike,
top.
we don't have any topographical maps, so we can.
I have one.
Mike?
Yes.
Just real quick, I don't think the staff recommendation is for fencing along the west.
Where was the fencing requirement? Or when we read the bulk regulations, it seemed to be a fence requirement.
I think there's some confusion. There is some language there about the C2 standards, and generically the C2 landscaping standards, which they're a guideline from the site plan end of things. They're not as hard as the zoning ordinance. There is some buffering requirements within the zoning ordinance, but where this is coming from is the landscaping standards. They do direct you to do that 6-foot tall fence, but that also allows some flexibility for unusual circumstances. We've had instances like this in the past where, because of grade and vegetation, there's other ways to.
In this instance, a 6-foot fence would do absolutely nothing to screen anything. So
I think that's.
We would not be, I don't believe we've asked for that or requested that on this.
That's my misunderstanding is we've read the ordinance, so. Let's just talk about, if I may, just point out a couple of the areas where we would like some forgiveness. One would be the ordinance requires for perimeter parking, for every 20 stalls, we have to have an island. So we would have this island and this island. During the day, during the weekday, during school hours, there aren't that many automobiles in the parking lot, and it's our intention to park the buses because we have a lot of schools that come along in this area. So we would like to not have those islands. Now, having said that, we're not opposed to the trees, shrubs. This is going to be phenomenal. What we'd like to do is plant them along in this area. But to give a safety mechanism, if you will, to this commission, what I would offer is we are working with the DOT because the DOT owns that property right next to our paving. And if the DOT allows us to landscape that, and so far our communication has been very positive, we'd like to heavily landscape that area in lieu of doing, on their property, in lieu of doing these 2 islands.
Well, let me make sure I understand this, Mike. Right next to that is the freeway.
Yes, which is 20 feet up in the air.
Okay.
But we're working with the DOT on landscaping it. We want to landscape it. We're a botanical garden. We want to make a statement. But if we don't work out an arrangement with the DOT, we'd be willing to put those 2 islands in if you think it's absolutely necessary. Another provision that we would like to do is not plant at these end islands. When we started this project, we did approximately 15 percolation tests on this property to see how absorbent, you will, that this ground is. And Alan Derbutsky performed the tests. They filled the holes with water, and it didn't, not a drop. This is over clay. This is an old tile yard where they dug clay up at the turn of the century and built tile. It does not perk at all. And in fact, in all of these garden areas, we are bringing drain tile in and new soil so we can raise plants. So what we would like to do in lieu of, and there's nothing growing, there are islands here, there's nothing there. What we would like to do is make these northern islands twice as large as they are today. And we are widening this band by about 6 feet. So we have more earth, and we're going to grub all of that out, go down, bring in appropriate soil, drainage, irrigation, because we would like to very heavily plant that as part of the entry experience. When one drives underneath the 235 bridge, we want this to scream botanics for that entrance experience. That's the wiggle room that I'm asking for. Other than that, we're happy to comply with all of staff's recommendations.
Dan?
Greg?
Mike, could you trace with your finger or a marker or something where the fence is that fronts this between the river?
That's enclosing the garden?
Yep.
Yes. It'd be right along here and along the trail. The Army Corps of Engineers requires that any fence be out of the floodplain, out of the floodway, which we would be. And we did request, and staff added a condition to the staff report, that we're more than happy to plant between the trail and the fence, subject to Army Corps of Engineering approval. In my experience with the Asian Garden, I'm on the board for that project. We were allowed to plant certain plant materials, not other plant materials. They're concerned about large root balls that if and when a flood, and it's going to happen, comes through, that they don't start pulling up these huge root balls that starts to scour then the earth. So they're very specific. So again, we're happy to provide plantings in that area, but we're going to have to get Army Corps approval to do that.
Jackie, just something. Greg, do you have a follow-up?
Well, I have a follow-up since now we know where it is. So the public would have to go into the Botanic Garden and pay to get into that space.
That is correct.
Okay.
Jackie, just something? No?
No. I have a question, but maybe it's,
CJ, go ahead.
Maybe it's not for Mike. This is public parkland, and I feel very strongly that it should be accessible to the taxpayers that own it. And to fence this property off, which is probably one of the most beautiful pieces of property in our downtown, I know I'm going to hear, oh, crime and all this sort of stuff, but I know of botanical centers in towns that have high crime, and the botanical gates are open. So for people who want to walk the grounds, and I just really have a problem of gating off this property and not allowing access to the people who own it. And I don't know who's to answer that, but.
I can address that. This came up the last time. It's a very good question. It's been a concern of a lot of people. I certainly recognize that. The city of Des Moines does own this property. Until very recently, the waterworks held the lease on this property. Right. The private organization that has stepped up to the table with mostly private funding of $13 million is going to develop this property, and it's going to be spectacular. And the initial lease is for 25 years, and then there are options beyond that to extend for quite some period of time. So you are correct, the city does own it, but another facility, another entity has the lease on this property. And it was decided some time ago, and City Council approved this as part of their lease, that they are going to provide a fence that surrounds the property. to protect the investment. There has been theft of plant materials. Somebody cut down a pine tree just this past Christmas so they can have a nice Christmas tree in their home. It happens. So we need to protect this investment. We have spent some considerable time about how to hide that fence, and I know that's not your issue. You're talking about accessibility. But we also don't want the property to look like a beautiful garden with a fence around it. So we are having plantings on both sides of the fence. And you have to keep in mind that the grade drops down to the river. So with the grade, we're able to locate a fence and have landscaping on either side. And if you're 20 feet downhill and you look up, you see the landscaping, you don't see the fence. So we've thought up quite a bit about that, how to provide a barrier to keep people from going in, but still trying to do it in an artful way. That's not going to satisfy, I know, people who believe this should be open to the public.
I still have a further question.
Sure.
Our art center is open to the public, and there's no charge. We have the Papa John Sculpture Park, which is open, and it's for the people. It's land that's owned by the people. And the other part about opening this access to people to walk the outdoor, the botanical gardens, is Gray's Lake is very, very much overused. That would allow some overflow for people. We want to be a healthy community, and I think the Botanical Center has as much responsibility to that as the city. I mean, the people who are designing this, I think they've missed the point. This is the public's property. And there has to be a way, if these other entities can be open, to keep the Botanical Center open to the people who really own it. And the city of Des Moines, by the way, is the taxpayers. It's not a separate entity. It is the taxpayers.
Any other questions, comments? Greg, do you have something?
Yeah, one question. As you guys have worked through this, has there been any consideration to a portion or some sort of component of this that would be, open to the public, as opposed to all of it behind the fence?
I'm going to ask that Stephanie approach and address that.
Stephanie Judela, President and CEO of the Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden at 909 Robert D. Ray Drive in Des Moines. There are actually several areas that will be open to the public. They are open to the public today, and that integration most notably is a really popular rose collection that is hardy roses that people should be planting in the landscape, and we have the largest collection. So that is right in this area, all accessible 24 hours a day. It's not closed behind public. It's a great educational space. Also, some of the plantings that are further along in this first phase, this is a multi-phase project that will happen over multiple years with more fundraising to come. Right now, on the far north end, in this section, we have a meadow that will start to establish, and that is not within the paid area at the moment, although the other planning processes have allowed us to fence outside of that in the future if we were to further develop with that.
Okay. Ted, did you have something?
I heard this once at some point during the process, but isn't there a free day or something like that in the?
Yes, that's a great plug. Principal Financial Group has agreed to sponsor our free days in 2013 with support to our annual contribution. It is really important to note that the facility operated at a significant loss while the city was operating it and while Waterworks was operating it. That is not something that's sustainable. I want to be in my job for a long time, and I hope that the garden's very sustainable for a long time. And so we have looked at ways that Waterworks and the city could have potentially recouped some of that loss and went out and pursued grants. So that's one example, but we do have at least 5 free days a year. And membership is $55, which you can always bring a guest with you at the base level. And there's even some senior and student rates at $35. We give out a lot of free passes at community events and neighborhood associations as we go around town talking about our gardens, so.
Any other questions? CJ?
I think this came up earlier about staff or this commission telling a botanical center what to plant. I guess I would like to see them be creative, do something that sustains the urban tree canopy and educates the public for new things that can go into their yards. And I think we can trust these people. They're the experts. So I really have a problem with putting restrictions on a botanical center for planting choices. That's just my comment.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Thank you. I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Please come forward in favor of the application. Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. If you would all line up on the wall here, and we take you one at a time. We need your name and address.
Marilyn Bruce, 833 Walker Street. I'm representing the Capitol Park neighborhood. I hardly ever speak without putting conditions ahead of it. So we have come on to this late. It is, we were surprised when we saw it on the Zoning Board of Adjustment. To their credit, somebody came forward and spoke to me, and it was a communications glitch where they had contacted someone from our neighborhood who did not share that with the rest of the neighborhood. So certainly our fault, and now we're kind of a Johnny-come-lately. We did speak at the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We were chagrined at the 14 acres of places that you could drink. That's passed. That's the first time we heard about the fence. What was said at the Zoning Board of Adjustment was, we're fencing it, I'm paraphrasing, fencing it so that people have to pay to look. This says something about a fence that apparently to me, and by the way, I want to drop back a little bit, that we are going to meet with the foundation next week, and unfortunately all of these things cross each other, and I apologize for that. But this says that a vinyl clad chain link fence, certainly a beautiful item, is in order to prevent vandalism. I've just heard something about a church that was locked up and was vandalized. It happens. It's really unfortunate. What I'm objecting to, and again, I have not had a chance after the Zoning Board of Adjustment to go back to the neighborhood, so I'm speaking on behalf of how I think they will believe it. And we have all of this beauty, and I was so pleased to hear a couple of you speak to the fact that you can't see it. And it's not just if you go inside free, it's not, it's the whole river walk that you're spending money and beautifying the area. We're just thrilled to death. But you drive down there, you drive by it, or you walk by it and you're on the trail, you can't see it because you're going to put a fence that prevents you from seeing it. I don't understand the concept. I'm hearing spoken words about how nice it's going to be. I don't think so.
So, any questions? Tim?
Just a quick comment. I empathize with you. However, this, it was brought up earlier, this particular entity was draining the taxpayers dry for years. And they tried two different things to get it into the black again. It never worked. People stepped up with their own money and said, let us give it a shot.
I understand
it's like the zoo. There's going to be things that you have to do to protect people from coming in.
You can drive by the zoo and still see that it's out there.
I appreciate that too, but what they're trying to do is with the fence is, I believe, if I understood Mr. Simonson correctly, is put shrubbery around it so you see the shrubs and not the fence. But again, the whole idea behind charging is for them to get a return on an investment, even to break even. I'm sure it's a nonprofit, is it not? They want to do something that hasn't been done. Somebody's got to pay for it.
I agree.
And and I think that's reasonable. And that's the question this comment that I had. And with that.
If you were going by it, it would look lovely if you could see it. And so.
Any other questions? CJ, Jeff.
I just have a question. I want to know if there was a study done as to botanical centers in communities. I was not too long ago to the Botanical Center in Birmingham, Alabama. Talk about a crime state. And that botanical garden is open for people to walk. I walked there several times, and it's beautiful. And I mean, somehow they're controlling crime. So has there been any study to see, are we really doing this because of crime, or are we doing it to raise money?
I think Mike wants to address that.
Yeah.
CJ.
I really appreciate everybody's concerns about the access to the Botanical Center, and I think it's been stated, this debate has been held before, and ultimately this debate was decided by the council when they decided to lease this ground to this Friends of the Botanical Center for this project. And so tonight you're looking at the site plan, and the fencing is part of the site plan. So that is a question that can be raised. My understanding of this black chain link, vinyl coated chain link fence is would be similar in appearance to the fence that's been installed on the south side of Waveland Golf Course along I-235. It is now a black vinyl coated chain link fence. The west side of the golf course is still just a plain chain link fence. Would look much better with a black vinyl chain link. It helps hide the appearance of the fence. This is a fencing upgrade on the site. And Tim's comment about the zoo being fenced, once again, there are a range of parks facilities available in this city. Some are not fenced and are free to use whenever. Even some of those that aren't fenced aren't free to be used ever. We have hours in our parks where you can't be in a park after dark. But our golf courses are fenced. You pay to use the golf course. Our zoo is fenced. There's an admission to get into the zoo. And they're proposing that the Botanical Center have a fencing for a portion of their property that you would have to pay to go into. It's not uncommon. And ultimately, it's been decided by the council as part of the lease that that's an acceptable structure. So I appreciate the concerns. I guess the question really would be relation to the site plan, and is the fencing material appropriate? And it's the staff's recommendation that the fencing material is appropriate.
But Mike, the question that I think CJ's asking is, have we got any studies or any of that sort of thing that we've used?
No,
okay.
We do not.
All right. Any other questions? Sir, please come forward, give us your name and address.
Neil McDonald. I live at the condos up the hill, the Delray Heights condominiums. I'm on the board of directors, even though I speak for myself. This is more, not sure if it's against or for, but I guess it's concerns because we live on East 6th. You go down the hill to Robert Ray. Lots of people go down that hill to Robert Ray. The police, I got great police protection 6 a.m., 2 p.m., and 10 p.m. because like 50 cops go down that road. So I'm going to have less, police. And when they close that for special events, the people that drive up there are confused, and it's another safety concern. And they turn around in our parking lot and.
Sir, I would say this, the road's already been vacated, so.
Okay.
That's not something that we have before us at this time.
Okay. And then the last thing, would be the just questions about the construction noise, and I guess I'm concerned too. We have a pool up there, and I think it drains down that hill, so we may want to get with them to talk. I mean, we don't want to flood their beautiful garden. And that's basically it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Just a minute. Anyone, any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anyone else to speak in opposition to the application? Seeing none? Mike, you need any?
I don't think we have any further comment, but we're certainly available to answer questions.
Okay. Any questions? I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I move that Greg make the motion.
You become an expert, I guess, Greg.
I would move staff, except I would like to see the fence, and I know Mike thinks that a vinyl coated chain link fence is an upgrade, but for a botanic garden, I think the fence should be way better than that. But I hesitate to tie their hands by saying that. But I can't imagine that that's good enough. This is on our riverfront, and we gave up a lot of space for it, and it ought to be way better than that if we can't get in to see it. So I don't know if that's a motion or not.
I think that's an appropriate motion. They need to investigate an upgrade to the fence, right?
At least on the parts that I could see if I were at Wells Fargo or wherever.
Okay. Okay.
Can I ask for clarification?
You can. I'm kidding.
Okay, first of all, the fence doesn't surround the entire area. This is important to note. This Belvedere is going to be a structure that's about 12 feet high with nice views down, so there would be no need for a fence there. We are actually looking at I won't call it a picket fence, but more of a vertical rail. Something more appropriate. Along this area and over in this area, and the chain link we were looking at for more that I would call more of the hidden areas where we can hide it.
That's a very good clarification.
Okay.
Do you have any?
Greg, I guess
Ted?
the reason why I brought it up about you making the motion is I gather that you were probably listening better than I was relative to what Mike wanted relief on in the parking lot.
And to tell you the truth, I'm okay with the relief that they're asking for. Because it's a botanic garden, there's way more plant material than we'd have otherwise. So to get a little relief in the parking area, I'm fine with that. So if you can add that to the motion, that's fine.
Any other comments?
I would like to make a friendly amendment to allow the Botanical Center experts to have more input on the plant selections and not tie their hands with our restrictions.
And I'm fine with that, too.
Okay. Greg, you got something?
Yeah, so can you clarify your motion? Because I thought you said you were going to move staff, and now I think I'm hearing you say you're okay with Mike's suggestions in the parking lot.
I am okay with Mike's changes in the parking lot. And I'm also okay with his description of how the fence works, because it doesn't sound like there's chain link except what I would consider on the backside, so I'm okay with that.
We're basically striking two. Is what.
And the plant material.
And then plant material.
Well, yeah.
Well, that would be an addition, but this is strike.
Strike two, and we're okay with 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we just need to add 7, which you're adding, that we're going to allow them to select the plant material.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Is that okay, Greg?
Yeah, I guess I'll just add a comment. I know this whole fence thing has been debated for a long time at the Urban Design Review Board level and everywhere. I'm personally okay with the fence, but Mike, I might suggest that, Mike, in the future, I might suggest that having some actual pictures and some sections and some images and some elevations and all those things would help some of the neighbors and even all the boards have debated this way too much, just so we understand what that looks like. Because I agree with you, I think the fence is going to be not as tall and as obscure as people think. And I think there's a way to make the visibility, even though there's a fence, that there's still visibility down in there. So maybe we're through all the boards now and you're done, but at some point, to minimize the debate, some stuff would help.
I agree. Have us down there when it's all done.
For free.
You're welcome to buy a membership.
Yeah, yeah.
Shirley Jets on the.
Well, I don't know that I want to make my comment before we actually go through and vote on this motion, because I don't want people to forget what Greg's motion is and the two accommodations, but I do have something I'd like to say.
No, go ahead and make your comments. I think you got to do that.
Just thinking about this project and how many years it's kind of been in the makings, so to speak, and Tim alluded to it, and I remember the Botanical Center and all of the difficulty there was to keep it as a viable part of the city. And so when the proposal came before us, after it had been to the city and a number of other places to address this proposal, I suffered a lot of heartburn because I taught at what was Longfellow School, which is now George Washington Carver up there on the top of the hill. I was there for 15 years. When the Botanical Gardens, when the Botanical Center opened, our entire student body walked over there. Our students were elated. Our parents and our people in the community were elated about this facility. Therefore, I walked that route with the Botanical Center from Lutheran Hospital all the way down here every single day after school. I would head out and I would walk, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. So when they made that proposal, I thought, oh my goodness, you're dealing with something that is just near and dear to my heart. Now you're going to close the road, and I had heartburn about that. But you know what, folks? I think this is going to be absolutely magnificent. I think that change is hard. Maybe we're not used to seeing that little fence there with the greenery on both sides. But I think overall, when I look at this, I just get more and more excited about it. And it is a change, and life is about changes, and I think it's going to be beautiful. So I appreciate all the work that's being done with it, and the fact that we have a person willing to step up to the plate and put down the finances in order for the city of Des Moines to have this. That's my comment.
Will, Cheslin?
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on what on Shirley said. I'm going to abstain on this. The city of Des Moines has asked and is asking and is proposing to vacate and to close 5 streets in the northeast and the southeast sections of the city. I think that these areas, frankly, are asked to bear more than their fair share of dislocation, inconvenience, and hardship for what is perceived to be the common good. And I'd like that to be read into the minutes, please.
You can work with her afterwards. Well, any other comments, CJ?
I would just like to say that I think for the first time, we have good professional management for the Botanical Center. And I'm really proud of the fact that of the group of people that brought her forward. And thank you so much for what you're doing.
Any other? Seeing none, all those in favor? Greg's motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? And you're abstaining, Will, or you're opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Same.
Thank you.
We have election.
A lot of this was yours, wasn't it?
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and Open the floor for election of officers, and
Slate was nominated.
Slate was nominated last month, or last 2 weeks ago. Is there any changes or additions to the slate?
It's the same crew, right?
Same crew. You gonna move it? Ted's gonna move it. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Passes. Thank you. Committee reports. Greg? Anything, Arno? Okay.
We will be meeting next week. Yes.
All right. Mike, director's report?
No additional items, thanks.
No additional items?
When is the, Greg, when do you propose to have the next?
Next RO is next Wednesday, 7:30 a.m.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the group? Seeing none, we're adjourned.
The city block in these shoes, gray sky turn blue. Change your view. Well, I can change your view. Walk the city block in